Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Spark Series presentation entitled Multiple Sclerosis: An Unpredictable Journey. My name is Samantha Dudding, and I want to introduce to you Michael Hewitt.
Hi.
Michael was diagnosed with MS in 2003, and this is his first time sharing his story. He's endured relapses and progressive changes in his abilities over the years, but he's always come out on top. He's a diehard WVU fan and an avid sports fan. He has an eclectic taste in music, pretty good dance moves, and he's gifted in creating the best road trip playlists. He's a former dedicated athlete and whitewater rafting guide and enjoys everything West Virginia has to offer. Thank you for joining us tonight to hear his story. I wanted to start off by explaining what multiple sclerosis is. Multiple sclerosis involves an autoimmune-mediated process in which an abnormal response of the body's immune system is directed against the central nervous system. What does that mean? Well, basically, the body's immune system mistakenly attacks myelin in the brainstem, brain, and spinal cord. There are 4 classifications of multiple sclerosis. You can feel free to read through these at any time on your own. I did want to note that Michael has been diagnosed with a form called primary progressive multiple sclerosis. It's the most uncommon, with less than 15% of all MS cases being diagnosed as such. In this form of MS, there's a linear progression of disease without very clearly defined moments of relapse and remission from the very start. Now let's get to Michael. Michael, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I want us to go ahead and just start by talking about your childhood. Where did you grow up? What were the things that you enjoyed doing as a kid?
I grew up in Richwood, West Virginia, which is in southern West Virginia. It's a small town, and I enjoyed playing sports, fishing.
What sports did you play?
I played basketball, football, and baseball.
All right, and I think we've got a couple clips here, so let's take a look at this basketball clip. That's you, number 30, right?
It is, yeah.
See what kind of skills you got. Is that you taking it down the court?
It is.
Nice. All right, they're not kidding. You got some skills. So I think it's important for us to share these sports clips with others because it shows that up until your diagnosis, you were someone who had aspirations of playing sports and you were dedicated and you put a lot of time and effort into those things. Let's check out this football clip. Is that you there got the interception?
Yes.
Taking it all the way for a touchdown. All right. Not bad.
Thank you.
So tell us about life after graduation from high school. You attended West Virginia University, majored in finance. What did you do in college?
Typical college kid stuff. I like to play intramurals and flag football. Just pick up basketball games with other students.
So kind of just carry over the things that you enjoyed doing as a kid right into college years. But in 2000, you started experiencing some kind of strange things. strange symptoms. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would look down with my head, and I would feel a shooting sensation that would go down throughout my spine, and it would reverberate throughout my lower extremities. And I knew that this was not normal. At first, I thought that it might have been an injury, but I didn't remember getting injured.
So, did you seek medical attention?
Yes, I went into the hospital to see a neurologist, and they did sort of baseline neurological exams. They did a lumbar puncture, and they did MRIs of my brain and spinal cord.
So let's back up just a few days. You kind of leading up to that appointment. Your family doctor had referred you for an appointment in neurology, but the night before, something big happened in Morgantown.
You could feel it in the air. It was an exciting day for Wednesday. We had a football game scheduled with Virginia Tech, and ended up winning 28-7. And the students rushed the field, and I was with my then girlfriend's little brother, and I just wanted him to experience some of the excitement. So we jumped the wall and just stayed off to the side and down on the field.
So what a contrast, from that night of celebration to the next day when you had your appointment. And like you said, you had those basic neurological exams, the lumbar puncture MRI, nerve conduction tests. On that very day, did doctors tell you what was wrong, or did you have to wait a little bit?
I had to wait a little bit, but I after doing some research myself and things that the way they diagnose MS is they kind of rule out everything else, and because MS will mimic a lot of other diseases and the illnesses. So yeah, that was
so you kind of knew
experience.
Yeah, and you kind of had an idea of what it might be.
Yeah, I did some research myself and lined up with the symptoms that I was having, and seemed to match what other people that had MS were saying online.
So tests were completed on a Thursday afternoon. The next day, the neurologist called and said, "Hey, we got to get some more tests done." Must have been urgent if they needed you to come in on a weekend. But how were you feeling about that?
Yeah, well, I tried to talk to the neurologist and postpone it through the weekend and get it on early in the week. And she told me very matter of factly that Mr. Hewitt, you should come in right now because we need to rule out some other things such as like a brain tumor that might end up killing you. So that caught my attention, and I happily went in that weekend and stayed in the hospital for about 4 days.
And at that point, they were able to tell you what the diagnosis was, the diagnosis of MS, right?
Right. They showed me the scans, and you see the lesions, and I had experienced symptoms in my lower right leg was starting to lag behind the left leg, and I was having trouble you know, just walking normally.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about just the progression in the first couple years. I mean, they gave you corticosteroids, which really minimized symptoms for quite a while, right?
Right. It was about a year and a half. I hadn't experienced any further symptoms, and I thought, hey, this, this is something that I'll be able to beat.
But then eventually you kind of noticed your walking was really being affected, right?
Yeah, it was my right leg. I was experiencing what they call drop foot, where it's harder for me to do a heel strike and basically the way you are when you just are walking normally.
Right. So obviously you kind of needed a use of a cane and a walker. At that point, explain to us what wall walker is.
Well, you find a wall and just kind of anything you can hold on to.
Just to kind of get your balance there.
Yeah.
That extra sense of security.
Yeah.
So the next 10 years, symptoms worsened. You told me medications were changed frequently from steroids to self-administered shots and immunosuppressant pills that you took on a daily basis. And eventually you just realized that you were going to need to be in a wheelchair.
Yeah, it was a tough pill to swallow, but yeah, that's correct.
So I imagine that things were tough for a while.
Yeah.
Relationships were changed, careers were affected.
A lot of life got put on hold for other things, and
yeah. Here's a video I thought maybe we could show of some of your rehabilitation at one point. Sorry about that.
Did you hit it?
Yeah. I'll tell them what we're talking about. Let's turn and take a seat. All right, sit in your chair, okay? Keep turning.
Yeah, they've got an Easton machine hooked up to my legs, and that allowed me to kind of use pedals on the machine.
It's kind of that use it or lose it factor, right?
Right. I'm trying to do a little less bad.
In 2016, unfortunately, Michael, you had a major exacerbation. Just a little background for people. Doctors regularly referred you to Health South for PT and OT, kind of for tune-ups, as you call them.
Yeah.
But this time, there was a day that you woke up and you realized things just weren't right. Tell us what was going on.
Well, I was trying to speak to the CNA that was in there that was going to get me to go to my PT and OT, and I could just see in her face that something was wrong, and I could hear my voice was coming out, and it didn't sound normal, and they took me into the hospital and gave me some corticosteroids, and that seemed to take the symptoms away for the time being.
So, I mean, when you kind of talk about slurred speech and one side of your body being extra weak or having difficulty moving just your right arm. To many of us, that would sound like, symptoms of a stroke. And I imagine that for you and for nurses and doctors, that is something that went through their head. But they did determine that you had an MS exacerbation. So tell me a little bit about what the road to recovery was like for that. After a couple weeks in the hospital, did you have to have other therapies?
Yeah, speech therapy and physical therapy, occupational therapy.
So we have a clip here. Hopefully it'll show us. And it looks like this was the moment when you realized that you had regained some movement in that right arm.
Yeah, that was, I was trying to pick my arm up, which was working normal the night before. And it just, that was as far as it would come up.
So after that, you began using your power wheelchair. You had some increase in symptoms, burning, loss of coordination, some continued therapies and other therapeutic activities. Briefly tell me about what it means to swim. How does that feel for you?
Well, it's swimming is kind of the great equalizer. It allowed me to get the range of motion that I couldn't get outside of the water.
Mm-hmm.
So
great. And then we kind of come to the last couple of years. So you and I met, which has been fun and exciting.
Yeah.
But also tell us some more about just how things have been going as far as your physical health.
Well, things have been pretty steady. I haven't seen any real further progression. I've kind of learned that the best way to communicate my words, and that's to slow down, so people can understand me, and I don't,
have that breakdown communication. Yeah. And so, your most recent scans have revealed smaller lesions, no additional progression. You've received some infusion treatments, and then recently in March of this year, you began receiving a new FDA-approved treatment. So just pills that you take twice a year. And the one benefit of this particular treatment is that your immune system is suppressed quite a bit initially, but it bounces back, which has been great given the situation that we're in with COVID. Your immune system, as far as blood work and stuff, has really bounced back well. You told me at one point that you've come to realize that MS might slow you down, but it's not going to stop you. I certainly hope that too, that you can keep doing the things that you enjoy doing. I did want to kind of hop back real quick to symptoms, and then we'll touch on etiology very quickly and kind of wrap things up. I want to talk about any cognitive changes you may have experienced over the years. We do know that one of your lesions was in the frontal lobe, and that part of your brain is responsible for what we call executive functioning. So higher levels of functioning, higher levels of thinking. So planning and organizing and completing tasks. Have those types of things become harder for you over the years?
Yes, but it just, different. The body, the brain's a complicated thing, and it finds different pathways to kind of go around the lesions, and it allows me to sound as normal as I can with my speech.
Okay. So as far as your speech goes, you had noticed some changes, but you're able to compensate and kind of repair that breakdown of communication using strategies that you've learned over the years.
Yes.
And while I have made it my goal to be your girlfriend first and foremost, it would be silly if I didn't also help along the way with some of these things. So, we've done things like create a notebook that has all of your very important information in a place that's readily available to you and well organized, so that if you do have questions or if a doctor were to call, that you can be more independent in those functions. And as far as speech, I'm always like, hydrate, make sure you're drinking enough water, and slow down, and those types of things. But, these are all kind of just strategies that I think that you've embraced and you've taken on so that you can feel more independent in your ability to communicate with others.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. You get on eHarmony and you end up finding exactly what you need, because I didn't realize that what you did, Sam, but the fact that you were a speech therapist has been able to help me out and help our relationship moving forward.
I'm glad it's helpful. Definitely, I can't claim to be professional as far as adult speech, but I think it's important that we work together, and that anyone who is very close in your life works together with you to find those strategies and those means of allowing you to be as independent as possible. Again, just wanted to touch quickly on etiology. So what is the cause of MS? Where does this come from? There are 3 things we can look at: environmental factors, such as location further from the equator. Sounds odd, but that kind of takes into account the direct sunlight that people are exposed to, which accounts for vitamin D in your bloodstream. So vitamin D deficiencies are thought to maybe add to cause of MS, smoking, obesity, other causes. Infectious factors such as mono, measles, HPV, types of pneumonia. Michael, I know that you had mono back in high school. Took you out for about a week from sports and all that stuff, but we do know that kind of lingers in your system. And then genetically, we do know that this is not directly inherited, but people do inherit a genetic risk for MS. All right, Michael, I'd like for you to tell us what's ahead for you. What are your hopes for the future?
There'll be better treatments for the MS, and that I can remain as healthy as possible, and
Obviously, continued therapies, things like that.
Yeah.
Just wanted to briefly touch on what the future of research looks like, and these come directly from the National MS Society website, talking about ways to stop progression, They're looking at ways of restoring what's been lost, and then also ways of ending MS. So finding those genes, searching for the triggers. And I want to end here by asking you to think about what you've learned today and how this will impact you as a professional, whether you're a medical professional like an SLP, an audiologist, whether you're going into some other field. How is this going to impact you as a person? Thinking of how Michael was playing sports his whole childhood. He went to college. He played intramural sports. He's a person. He was a whitewater rafting guide for a few years. He took people on these adventures. And then when he was diagnosed with MS, a lot of that changed for him. I'm an SLP in the school system. I am not in the medical setting. I do not typically work with people who have MS or other forms of progressive diseases. But I will say that knowing Michael, knowing his story, understanding his story, getting to know him better, has taught me patience. It's taught me empathy. It's taught me understanding for others who are different. So I'm able to do my job better because I know Michael, because I know his story and I understand his story. So I want you to think about that. What's going to change for you now that you've heard Michael's story? Here's some additional information, resources for you to look at. We will take questions here in just a moment, but I want to just give time for Michael to wrap this up.
Well, I hope this has been very informative for you guys, and I'd like to thank Professor Dunning for giving me the right forum to tell my story, and I'd like to, of course, thank Sam for putting this all together.
Well, thanks, Michael, for being so vulnerable, for stepping out of your comfort zone, for trying something new. I do think that this certainly is going to impact people in ways that you don't even know, and we appreciate you taking the time to do this. So we will kind of cut off from here and go to a live Q&A.